Okay, so you're listening to You Can Fix That in Post with Simon, Elise, and Dave. And this week, it's Dave's turn for the topic, and it is...
The Alien franchise.
Ooh.
First franchise that we've talked about.
I was going to say, it's not the first franchise, but it's the first one we've talked about.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I got acquainted with the Alien franchise just today and yesterday. Watched them for the...
You surely mean reacquainted? You'd seen them
Reacquainted,
before.
yes. I have seen most of them before.
Yeah,
yes.
because the idea of going, you picked the topic and then you decided to watch the films afterwards.
That's a bold move if you've
Yes.
never even seen the films.
No, I had to rewatch them, and it's actually good watching them in order because I now sort of understand the story.
Can I ask a question then?
Mm.
When you first watched them, what was your age? What was your perspective on them?
Yeah, wow. I don't know. I probably would have been like 16 or something when I watched. I don't know. Couldn't tell you exactly which ones I watched. I think I remember Aliens actually. I definitely didn't see Alien 3, and I remember watching a little bit of Resurrection when it was on TV.
So I got a question for you then.
Yeah.
From what you experienced when you were younger, did the series hold up?
Definitely a lot of good bits, as good as I remember. The thing with watching all of them in a row, I kind of got sick of, finding an alien. The alien kills everyone. They blow up the planet or the ship or whatever.
So basically the setup.
Yeah,
You were just like, I want some differences.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
It's like watching 5 different Marvel origin stories for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely.
How many times can Uncle Ben die?
Not enough. I want the Spider-Man movie where it's all Uncle Ben death all the time.
The effects, though, I really liked. I actually found that the special effects seemed to get worse as time went on, though. I think because they got more bold with like what computer graphics they could do. Whereas, and you could tell
they
it's
definitely
obvious.
tried new things.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is, when you start with Alien and Aliens, you're having to do real, makeup and creature effects.
Puppets and
And
It's our old buddy Stan Winston.
Stan Winston. Yeah. And if you ever want to get an insight into Stan Winston, listen to the audio commentary of Aliens, and he's fascinating. Because he'll talk about the mutiny on set, which is amazing. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, when you were younger, you liked them? They made an impression? Or why did you choose this topic?
Well, probably the main reason was people would talk about it and I wouldn't understand the timeline of it. And I sort of wanted to, get a grasp of that. But I do remember the movies well. I remember enjoying the movies. I remember cool bits from the movie.
Yeah.
I remember noticing things like from the game StarCraft where they reference it heavily.
Okay, so I'm going to lead us off here then with, Alien. Where does it rank in terms of the entire series? And, why was it so noteworthy for its time?
For me, I would say that it's only improved with age. The way I think it's aged really well. I personally prefer Aliens. That's my number one, and Alien comes up second.
Totally agree.
Yep. Oh, good. I was kind of hoping we could fight about it, but it's good to have someone agree
We
with
can
me.
just fight about other things.
It for like as throwing up my fist for feminism, pioneering the female action hero is awesome, and she is an awesome. Ripley is an awesome action hero.
See, here's my thing. I totally agree with that. I love the idea of, the damsel in distress thing is done. This is crap. Everyone expects it. And now let's have this, kick-ass female character. Admittedly, Ripley wasn't actually a chick to begin with.
No, she was originally written as a man.
Well, I mean, the writers had written the last name so that they could have them ambiguous. So you wouldn't know. So you could just...
Someone else was cast, though, weren't they, before Sigourney came along?
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of writing the script and the initial ideas, it was all like, we'll call this one Dallas and we'll call this one blah. So it's just like, let's call this one male or female, well, depending on how the director wants to take it.
Yeah, she isn't actually even given a first name at all in the film, is she?
Yeah.
Or is she in the director's
Ellen.
cut?
In number 2, I think she's called?
No,
Out?
yeah, I mean, like, she isn't
In the
named
first
with her
one,
first
yeah.
name.
Yeah.
This is director's cut
I-
only, maybe.
I don't know.
I
like-
don't. I rewatched the theatrical release, so I feel like I'm a little bit behind.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I should have watched the director's cut.
I think it's like once mentioned only.
Yeah.
So, my thing is that it was original. By that I mean, they've got this guy, Geiger, to do all these kind of production images and like the original Alien concept, and then
Yeah. Dan O'Bannon had a massive heart on for Geiger's artwork
yeah,
in that Necronomicon and stuff.
and you can actually see that there are other film franchises that take away from his work. For example, if you ever see the film series Species, the alien in that is very similar to the alien in the Alien franchise, and that they actually credit Geiger as inspiration for that. In Species, it's a lot more literal. You look at it and you go, this looks like a Geiger painting. The other thing to note about Geiger is that they didn't credit him for the creative elements in Alien Resurrection, so he sued them.
Oh, good for him.
So one of those things where it's just like, this series is so full of people suing each other and hating
It's
each other.
filled with salty bastards, isn't it?
Yeah.
Every single film in the franchise seems to have some kind of legal drama.
Or tension on set. Like, so Dan O'Bannon or whatever had issues.
He's a salty guy.
Yeah, it's just like,
He's-
I want to direct this thing,
Yeah.
and they got that guy. And then everyone's just like, it was just a sulky bastard on set. And then it's like, Ridley Scott had these ideas for, the score and different things in terms of the musical score. And he's getting Jerry Goldsmith to kind of fill in the blanks, and apparently they're fighting. And you're just like, Jerry Goldsmith, didn't he win 1 million Oscars for Best Score? And he's fighting with Ridley Scott over the score. It's just, Now, that is actually the least amount of fighting in any of the Alien films there are. The first one has the least amount of fighting. Now, the second one is just like, you got James Cameron directing, and what happens is he has only done Piranha 2, which is he was dragged in because the director was fired, and so he only directed really half of it. And then he did Terminator, but Terminator hadn't been released yet. So when he's doing the sequel to the famous British Alien, which was directed by Ridley Scott and, recognized by the Academy as being special, this American 31-year-old is going to come in there and basically direct the sequel. Nah, nuts to that. So the first AD launches this mutiny to kind of go, I'm going to be the one who directs this thing. And Cameron has all these issues with all these British old people who got their positions based on being there the longest, not on talent. And, okay, we have breaks at 10 o'clock, we have breaks at 2 o'clock, we have tea breaks, and it's just like, you're kidding me.
They're British, so
Yeah.
they need their tea.
We need our tea while we're looking at the vagina-like creature. Yeah. So, the thing that stops this mutiny is that halfway through shooting, Terminator opens at the box office and it goes insane. And they're like, oh, yeah, that guy who we didn't know could direct. And
Turns out he's pretty good.
Yeah, and he's grossing tens of millions of dollars. Yeah, okay. Consequently, James Cameron never goes to Pinewood Studios again. It's just like, fuck you, Pinewood Studios. And it's a major studio in the in the UK. I mean, they do all the Bond films there, and like Harry Potter's, and a million other things. And then you've got David Fincher, who's dragged in for Alien 3, and James Cameron hates Alien 3 because it's just like, yep, all these characters I spent all that time developing, you just kill them in the first 5 seconds.
They just die off screen. It's fine.
They were sleeping and they never woke up. But I spent all this time on Newt and,
Now she's
Hicks
just
and...
gone.
Yeah. Well, he's directed a couple of music videos, and then he's thrown into directing the third one. And he's like in his 30s again, his first film ever, and the executive producers, like, 20th Century Fox, who own all this stuff, are just like, yeah, we don't like this, so we're going to change that. We don't like that. It's like, yep, you never got Final Cut or any of that kind of stuff, so he had no creative control. And Fincher goes back, and when they're inviting everyone, all the directors, to do their digital versions and 20th anniversary release and all that kind of crap. He goes, yeah, no thanks. It was not a good time for him. All the other directors, did audio commentaries, did director's cuts, and he had nothing to do with that because he hated it.
Fair enough. I mean, you hear a lot about creative control taken away from directors and, things like the recent drama with the Star Wars films and things like that. And as a creative person, it would be heartbreaking. You put your heart and soul into making something great and then have some freaking suits come along and go, yeah, no, this isn't testing great, so we're just going to change everything. You're like, well, what the hell?
To be perfectly honest, I don't mind testing now. Like, if someone said to me, are they changing it because it didn't test well, I'd go, yeah, that's okay. But if they're just changing it because it's like, yeah, we make lots more money and we don't like that thing, then I go, yeah, that's crap.
Yeah.
And then the last one, you got Joss Whedon, who's written this script and he loves it. And then he's getting the Frenchy guy who's, famous for City of Lost Children and Delicatessen and eventually goes on to direct Amelie. And he's just like, yeah, the Frenchman fucked my script. He didn't do a good job.
And he's very vocal about that as well. He's not, he's not keeping that to himself.
Yeah. And the Frenchman really had a good time, apparently. Like, when they invited everyone back to do their director's cuts, he was just like, I don't need to do one, really. I mean, I was quite happy with
I made the greatest film of all time.
Yeah. So, the series is fraught with this kind of creative tension between all these different players. But I think the thing that stands out is that the quality is there and the directors are of a decent quality. Like, when you look at James Cameron goes on to gross highest with Avatar and then Titanic and Avatar, billions of dollars. David Fincher, Panic Room, one location, just to throw that out there to the first episode, thanks to Elise, but goes on to do Seven, Fight Club, Zodiac, millions of these films that are critically acclaimed, and, I think the thing that makes these things of a decent quality is something that I talked to Dave about before, which is that it's not a sequel that's thrown out a year or two later because of the success of the first one. From 1979 to 86, there's 7 years, and they've had to work on this idea. And then from 86 to 92, 91, that's another 5 years thrown in the mix of having to work on this sequel. And then 97 for Alien Resurrection. I mean, the idea of, we're just going to put all this crap together and people will like the aliens so they can just run around causing mayhem. It's like, no, they've had to work out how they're going to make these films good. And they're going to get the top-end talent to make them.
And it's not to throw it back to Star Wars again, it's not forcing something out every 12 months to keep a momentum up. It's, it's being smart about it and it's, workshopping it and getting the right director and getting the right person to write the script. Yeah, and it shows. So let's talk about some of the themes from Alien particularly, but that also run through the entire series. The big one that people seem to get smashed over the head with, male rape. The writer of the first film, Dan O'Bannon, was very explicit about wanting to rape in inverted commas hit the audience, and was really keen to make it really explicit, and the whole face hugger on the face with the proboscis down the throat, there's no two ways about that.
So he wanted to male rape the audience.
Yeah, he had worked on Dark Star, which apparently was a massive flop. I've never seen it. I've been told that it's not great. And decided that, his little way of getting revenge on the audience was to scare the pants off them by raping them, essentially.
Right. As opposed to female rape?
Yeah. Well, it's seems much more shocking.
Right.
To the audience for...
Right, as in the actors were males that had the face suckers.
Yeah, well, the first one, yeah. The face sucker attacks the character of Kane. who is a man.
Played by John Hurt.
Yes.
And the thing is, if you look at the history of film, it's not a huge amount of, say, men being taken advantage of in terms of, you know...
Until this era of Game of Thrones. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Or Shawshank, or, you know, a million other films that we don't really want you to visualize right now.
Yeah, different podcast altogether.
Yeah, the male rape podcast. Coming this summer. Okay, so the story behind John Hurt is that he was cast, and then it was like, oh, I can't do that. It conflicts with my schedule. And he was going to do a film in South Africa. And the person they cast to replace him happened to fall deathly ill. Not that he died, with diabetes. So they're like, this guy who we've got to replace John Hurt is now not able to do the role. So we need to get someone else. Now, John Hurt, who's going to do this film in Africa, gets stopped at the border and is not allowed entry into Africa because apparently he is a massive guy against apartheid at the time. Now, the issue being that it wasn't John Hurt who was actually really against apartheid at the time. Admittedly, he said no, he wasn't a fan of it, but they were thinking John Hurd. So the father out of Home Alone.
Oh, completely different guy.
Yeah, completely different guy. So you can imagine...
excuse me. The guy from Sharknado.
Okay. Who's he in Sharknado?
The bar guy?
Yeah, he's the bar guy in Sharknado.
He's the what guy?
The, like, drunk guy in Sharknado, in the very first one.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Wow, I stumped you with that one. That's good.
Yeah.
It's good to catch you off guard sometimes.
My problem is that Sharknado 5 has kind of male raped my brain. So, yeah, John Hurt, you know him from Radio Flyer, you know him from Sopranos and stuff like that. He was massively anti-apartheid, apparently. And so John Hurt's in Africa going, I'm ready to do my film, and then it's like, what, you won't let me in because... Oh.
No, wait, I was the Elephant Man guy.
Yeah, that's me. I'm, you know... So they bring him back, and that's why he's able to play the part of Kane, because it's like, this guy was diabetic and dying, and this guy, his film wasn't, you know, going ahead because, yeah. So, the other thing about John Hurt is that he is a good sport. You know, years later in Spaceballs, he reprises that role again, where he will famously go, oh, not again. And then the alien comes out of his chest, and then you get that thing of the... doing like the
little dancing,
like "Hello, my baby, hello, my honey." So you got the male rape thing going on with Alien. What are the other themes? Like we talked about the idea of Alien could possibly be a one location film, which we yeah. So how is it that this film that is set in basically one spaceship and that is at the time sci-fi is not hugely, you know, recognized by the Academy as being all high-end stuff. How is this that we're talking about this like 40 years later? So
he builds tension absolutely masterfully. You don't see the alien on screen for a lot of the film. As like we've mentioned previously, Hitchcock was the pioneer of building tension on screen without having to see anything terrifying. The audience is terrified.
Yeah, and it's more about imagining what's happening than being shown it explicitly. Like, we don't need to see an alien cut someone to shreds if we can see a cat experience that.
Exactly. Yeah. And he builds that tension through by the audience learning about the alien before it sees it. Like, you see what it can do with its blood. You see the sucker on the face before you see the actual alien, and the sucker is freaking scary before the alien even appears. It's and
the acid for blood thing's interesting in that the writers were like, well, why don't they just shoot this thing? If it's got acid for blood, it could eat through the hull and then they'd all die. Yeah, that's a good excuse. Yeah.
Yep.
Let's do that. So they have to use fire, which is thrown back in Alien 3, where it's just like, we're on a prison planet. We've got no weapons. What can we do? We've got fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's thrown back a little bit in Aliens in the fact that they're all like, they're on a giant nuclear reactor thing. So everyone,
Yeah.
give us your ammo and let's just use fire. It's very convenient, really. Can we just shoot it? Bang, it's dead.
It's dead.
Roll credits.
Yeah.
You know, but the reality is, let's just use fire.
Yeah.
I think also, if you look at that time period, Spielberg did it again with Jaws. It was not planned. It was like, hey, the shark's not working, so we can't see it. So we've got this cardboard fin. And the barrels, like, you know, oh, we'll shoot a barrel, and every time a barrel pops out of the water, we'll just assume it's the shark. Yeah, so the tension, the one location aspect of it as well, whereby we're, you know, confined. We're in this small space with these characters, with this thing that's hunting them down.
They literally can't leave. There's nowhere to go.
And it's the fact that you look at the conventions that are being broken at the time. You look at the fact that we have this strong female lead who's surviving. You look at the amount of detail and planning that's gone into this thing. Sci-fi up until then, you know, you've got these high-end things of like 2001 and that kind of stuff. But if you looked at, say, sci-fi that was about a creature killing people, there was not money put into that. It was not, let's take this thing seriously. This thing built tension. It was Jaws in space, basically. And academics have since put it in that term of, you know, it's Jaws in space. And why is that working? Because it takes the material seriously. It's not like, oh, look, there's a giant squid monster in a spaceship and it's killing people, and look, we can see the wires, you know.
Yeah. It melded body horror with sci-fi as well. So it wasn't just this sort of highbrow sci-fi movie where, you know, it was all academic and not scary.
Yeah.
There was genuine, like, jump out of your seat scares in there as well.
Yeah.
No one saw it coming when that thing burst out of Kane's chest.
Yeah.
Even the actors apparently didn't know how big of a situation it was going to be.
Yeah, deliberately, so that they could scare the crap out of them.
Yeah. So the other theme that runs through the whole franchise, really, is one of corporate greed. Starting from very first Alien film, when Ash receives his message that the crew is expendable, through Aliens with the character of Burke, all the way through, and then this overarching company or corporation of Weyland-Yutani has these little fingers in the pie that ties the whole thing together.
Well, I mean, when you look at the initial Alien film, I mean, it's like a mining ship, and all these people are shit kickers. They're like, you know, redneck kind of trash.
Arguing about how many shares they're going to get.
Yeah, and then going, oh, your shares won't be worth anything if you don't stop here and look at this alien thing. They're like, really? We don't get paid? We're just miners, dude. This is crap.
Yeah.
And then when you look at Burke in Aliens, he basically sends a family out to look for the eggs.
Yeah, he's a cold-blooded guy.
Yeah. And later on, admittedly, Paul Reiser is great at that. And, you know, props for the people who cast him in Stranger Things Season 2.
Oh, yeah. That was huge.
Yeah.
That was such a get.
It was a get, but also it's like he totally goes against the type. Everyone's just like,
Yeah, I know. The whole time you're sitting there like, oh my god, when is he going to expose himself as a jerk?
Yeah. And it
When is
doesn't
he going to
happen.
start experimenting on children?
Yeah, it's like, no, he's a good guy. What? It's like, oh yeah, he was a good guy. I'm mad about you too.
Why do I keep coming back to him being a dick?
Yeah.
It's because of this film. He did it so well.
And then you've got Alien 3, where basically Ripley throws herself into molten lava so that the corporation doesn't get this, you know,
Queen, yeah.
well, any kind of alien to exploit for cash gain. And what's interesting is by the fourth film, they're just like,
It's way too late. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, well, we can't really be bothered with the corporation anymore, so let's just say the military has it because the corporation's gone bust.
But the character of Bishop is really interesting. He's the android from Aliens. he crops up in some weird. Well, the name Bishop and the actor Lance Henriksen crops up in Alien vs Predator in
Yeah.
a completely different timeline.
Yeah, a timeline that doesn't exist based on the Alien series, but proposes a different idea of, no, a crazy android David didn't create them because he's crazy. It's that the aliens were game to be hunted by the predators, and that humans were deliberately sacrificing themselves in order for this hunt to happen. And it happened, during the Aztec days and the Egyptians and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in that Alien vs. Predator first film, Lance Henriksen is playing the original Bishop Weyland, who is funding this expedition to the Antarctic or whatever it is. And here's my problem with Prometheus. You've got this actor who's played Bishop in Aliens as the real entity, or potentially the real entity in Alien 3, and in Alien vs. Predator. And with Prometheus, they hire Guy Pearce to play...
Old man makeup on as well.
And it's like, okay, they initially had scenes where Guy Pearce was young, which were cut, and then they had him as old. So they probably would have hired him with the idea of, well, if we're going to have him young and old, we need an actor who's young, and then we turn him old.
Age him up, yeah.
But then they remove all the young stuff, and you're just like, you couldn't have gone with Lance Henriksen, the guy who's basically been the face of the corporation for Aliens, Alien 3, Alien versus Predator. And it's like, nope.
No, we just want a new guy.
Yeah. And the makeup and the special effects to make him look old look pretty terrible.
Yeah, they're not great.
Now, you can be forgiven in terms of, like, big screen TV and all that stuff, but when you're at the cinema and you see his face and you're just like, what the hell is that?
Especially if you don't see him young and wonder why.
Yeah.
But in Covenant, I think they did have flashbacks.
To him younger.
Yes.
Yeah.
The start is basically him waking up David going, hi, I've created
I made you. Yep.
And now...
And then David going crazy wondering why.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned Ripley falling, into the lava with the thing inside her, right?
Yeah.
That was one thing that confused me, because then is it Resurrection? They're like cutting it out of her, but it was a clone maybe, and her body was all perfect. Like, what happened there?
So the idea is that the blood sample that was taken on that prison planet in Alien 3 would have had her and the alien's DNA in it. Because
Right.
it's before the aliens burst out of her. It's like when she first arrived, the doctor takes some blood and goes, oh, hello, I'm Charles Dance. I really don't like my little son who's, Tyrion Lannister or whatever it is.
So
Sorry, crossing genres here. Confusing.
So what happens is they take that sample and they clone her and the alien out of that, and which is why when you have that scene in Alien Resurrection where there's like 5 or more versions of her where it's just like, yep, we couldn't separate the two entities, so she's got like, weird claws and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And she has that moment.
Again with the body horror.
Yeah, lots of body horror, and then she's burning them all, and then Ron Perlman goes, I don't get it, it's like a chick thing, is it? You're just like, what a perfect guy to be
Ron
doing.
Perlman.
Yeah. And the reason why Ron Perlman was cast was because Jean-Pierre Jeunet had him in City of Lost Children. So it's just like, okay. Yeah.
So getting slightly off topic here.
Yeah, I tend to rant. I think that's evident.
So, yeah, we're talking about the clones of Ripley.
And I think to some extent, you can't mention this franchise without saying Sigourney Weaver and the power she yields. Like when you go, okay, the first film, big success. Okay, so in the second film, she would have been paid crap loads more. In the third film, she went, yeah, I'll do it. But, I've got to die at the end of it. What? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you're killing me off.
put it in the contract, I'm going to die. And then, like, you can't have a direct sequel to these films without including her. And she's getting older, and now there's this idea of Neil Blomkamp from, District
District
9 and Chappie making another one that's set after the events of Aliens, and it's like, yep, she's in her 60s now, and she's going to play a version of herself which ignores Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, and she's going to play a kick-ass,
Granny.
fighter again. Yeah.
I'm on board for that. I want to see that.
Yeah, that's my thing. I think the idea of the power of Sigourney Weaver in this franchise is it's undisputed, but it's also understated. So you look at the franchise and you go, okay, 79, you got Alien. Then you've got 86, you got Aliens. And then you got 92 with 91, 92 with Alien 3. And then you got Alien Resurrection in 97. So you kind of go, okay, they're sticking to every, 7 to 5 years.
There's a decent amount of time between them.
Yeah. But also, when you look at the gap between Alien Resurrection and Prometheus, there's 15 years there.
Yeah, and then that's there for a reason.
Yeah, and that's because you're not making an Alien sequel without Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah.
And, she had things in her contract for the other films where it's like, in this one I want to die. And in this one I want to have sex with an alien, which she gets to do in Alien Resurrection. It's subliminal and it's a bit, artistically done, but she got that thing ticked off on her contract. Now, Joss Whedon had written a script in which they go back, like they're at Earth, and it's about aliens on Earth. Alien Resurrection ends with, Earth, what a shithole. And that film's never created because Sigourney Weaver does not want to go to Earth. She's just like, I want to go back to LV-43 or whatever it is, the original planet where aliens and all that shit is set. And it's like, I don't want to go to Earth and have an alien Earth film. So that is her power. She is going to greenlight whatever is done in terms of story as well as director. And that's why there's a massive gap between Alien Resurrection and Prometheus. And
because it really did go in a very different direction with a very different tone and a completely different cast as well. There was no real carry on from the previous films.
Yeah, and I believe next week we're going to spend crap loads of time on Prometheus.
Yay!
What it does wrong, what it does right.
We're gonna wrap it up for this week, but we are gonna keep going with this theme. Dave's got us really hooked on this now. So thank you very much for listening. This has been You Can Fix That in Post.